Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Christ169, aka Mark, coming to you with another Let's Talk video. And this video is going to be about something that wasn't requested right away. A lot of people really don't request a lot of stuff like this, but I had a conversation with somebody on on Messenger, but also on um Messenger, but also on on Messenger, but also on um, X and stuff like that, and also Instagram, talking about the G4, tech TV, and how it was revolutionary at one time, but became pretty much laughing stock, and they wondered why it went out. They watched a lot of videos, people talking about it, but they still didn't understand what really happened. And I think, you know what, I'll make another video about this because I covered the G4 collapse. That one lady played Peter Pan, and that trashed the fact that women and the women are being fondled or being looked at in games and blah blah blah. And of course, that torpedoed the resurrection of G4. Not only that, though, G4 is going away anyway because it was more of a Esquire network, cops, crap like that, and nobody really cared about watching cops. You can watch cops on an antenna. I'm not saying cops are crap. But saying TV show cops have been played out since the '90s. So come on, let's get on ourselves. There's cops episodes on antenna behind me on on Toon Network. Me TV Tunes had an episode of Cops airing on it, for crying out loud. Cops is everywhere, right? Now, if you go to the Wikipedia page, G4, nationwide, it was in Glendale, California, English, obviously. Comcast was the owner, and G Media launched in 2022. Originally, it launched way earlier than that. It launched way back in Tech TV, 2004, 2005. It replaced Tech TV, closed down December  31st. I remember that because it was New Year's Eve. The original then went downhill after that. 3 years ago, relaunched and it died out. Um, I can go on a boring story of the merger and the DirecTV carriage dispute and buyout by UFC, WWE, and I've read this a couple times already. So I got an idea what really went wrong with them. And to make it simple, like I say, I have a saying called "Keep it simple, stupid." That's why I put Gamers Nexus once again. Shout out to Gamers Nexus, Hardware Unboxing, Paul's Hardware, Jay's Two Cents, Iceberg Tech, the Actman, Digital Foundry, and Toasty Bros, and also YouTube itself. Because this is the entity that destroyed G4 Tech TV. This is the entity that we're on, destroyed G4 Tech TV. Because around 2006, 2007, YouTube formed. Google had a good idea, and the many ideas they had are pretty decent. But they have a graveyard that showed a lot of ideas that didn't work out. I have YouTube TV. I'll do a review on that one here coming up probably next weeks. By the way, it's a great service. I love it to death. It's great. Outside of having Spectrum Cable TV, is the best service I ever had. Um, Fubo is really good, but the topic of our time. But going back to G4, why it fell apart? Very simple. YouTube came in and said, "Get out of here," and pushed G4. My chair, I feel like it's gonna fall over or something. It's weird. Sorry. Um, G4. It, the entity that owned G4 was last entity was actually called G4 Media. Comcast uh, owned the channel because of Comcast, because every channel had an owner. Um, I think the biggest problem, what really drove it out of the park, was they made it a great show channel to watch. Made Tech TV a great place to watch your tech stuff because it had the screensavers. It had Attack of the Show. It had Underground. It had X Play. It had all these great. Attack Show came on later on. Attack of the Show was actually screensavers and it was morphed into Attack of the Show. It was more of a parody of a bunch of garbage and a bunch of tongue in cheek kind of things. Have Olivia Munn, who was cute, and dive into it and when our French maid's dress, dive into a big gigantic pool pudding. That's great and all for your 17, 16-year-old kids who are understanding what it is to self self pleasure. I'm trying to keep it somewhat PG around here, if possibly can. But for a lot of us adults, and I was, 2000 in that time frame, I was out of high school for many years, or for almost a decade at that point in time, about 10, 12 years, when that kind of show really started going to me off the rails. But the Screensavers, they fired the original host of Screensavers. Kevin Pereira was a great host, tackling the show. Olivia Munn was cute, but it didn't bring a lot of substance. It didn't bring substance other than tongue in cheek nonsense. And when X Play had Morgan Webb, yeah, she's wearing. You could tell they're trying to grab rating when she's wearing tighter and tighter shirts, showing off, her bust and all, and that's fine. Once again, like I said, that's fine. We have adolescent teens learning about you know self pleasure stuff. Once again, trying to keep stuff PG as possible. But it's also too that it's like this is supposed to be a tech channel, G4, and then becoming a man channel. But it's like it's not really a man channel. It's like a kids channel with adult undertones. And it's kind of creepy, to me. Like man, it's like watching a grown man on YouTube, to talk about Hello Kitty and My Little Ponies. Kind of weird stuff. But if a teenager does it, it's one thing. It's a person in the group. But when an adult does it, it's kind of strange. And that's kind of double standard. But sometimes you need double standards. And I think that G4 was that TV was good when it had screensavers, when it had cheat that one lady from cheat codes about certain games you can play and stuff. That's how I found out about the unlimited weapons and the games like Grand Theft Auto 4. No, unlimited weapons like that. You're playing single player in Grand Theft Auto 4. You type in a cheat code and you get all the weapons unlocked. Um, that's cool stuff. That's stuff you want to that's stuff that's actually important to gamers because it's fun. But also G4 also had X Play. We talked about games and talked about the gaming stuff. We talked about gaming, the issues and what game with 3 out of 5. They hated Japanese games for some reason, but they loved other games, and they loved the fact that the games were being shown on TV and you could watch the person playing it, have an idea where you want to go out and go buy that game or not. You didn't have that, back in the early, in a dawn of gaming in the 80s and 90s. You didn't have that stuff. You had still pictures of games that looked cool, but if you got home and played it, in most cases, the mission they were on were cool because the game itself is boring for half the time or really, really hard and you had to get through it. You didn't know that. So you bought a game at the store, it became garbage because the cool pictures like one or two levels and that's it. The rest of it back to garbage or whatever. So having a game channel like that was revolutionary for us people, in the 90s went and launched in 2000, but it came out. It came out, with the adaptation of being for gamers by gamers, and the person who owned it at first, original founder, I can find the person's name here. The founder was Charles, and he was actually a gamer too as well. The founder was actually a gamer called Charles Hiscall. Was actually one of the gamers, guy who actually started it all way back in the day. Somebody else too as well started it too as well. But it's just, it's so much gaga here. You have to get through all the gaga to figure it out. It's like, it's just like, it's just, you can't really, wait around to sit there and go, okay, I'm gonna go through all these people and find out who actually created it. But then I read it. But G4 itself was good because Tech TV was good because it had tech. And I remember a time watching my older brother, and we watched the screensavers making noises, dial up noises, but also they powered a gaming PC way before a Gamers Nexus did it, or way before Jay's Two Cents did it. They powered a gaming rig, turned it on using shit, it's in my head. I can't get it out of my head here. Um, Not nitroglycerin. No, I wouldn't use that for lighting on fire. But to use uh, damn it. It's in my head bouncing around, guys. Sorry, but they used not liquid air. It's a liquid nitrogen. Nitrogen. It had I remember it very vividly. The screensavers had a cup, and they literally poured stuff into a cup. A styrofoam cup. For some reason, styrofoam can withstand the liquid nitrogen cool, and they didn't pour it in the processor like Jay's Two Cents or Gamer X's did. They powered it by using a liquid nitrogen, not nitrogen, yeah, liquid nitrogen, hydrogen, liquid, nitrogen to power the PC, and the PC came on for a few seconds, but they had to keep pouring it in there to keep going. And decades later, Gamers Next J2 Cents, they overclock a processor by doing the same thing, literally dumping a liquid nitrogen, um, on the CPU, and watch it literally is bubbling because it's getting so hot. And watching J2 Cents take a 5090 and put a special apparatus on it to pour liquid nitrogen into the apparatus to keep the 5090 cool by keeping it from also leaking everywhere. It's and I was like liquid air, what it was as too, but it was weird because they had all this stuff and you had all this stuff going on. That is tech stuff in the 90s and late in 2000s and early 2010s that you didn't see that. You didn't see screensavers or anybody else that matter before that taking liquid nitrogen to power on a PC. Yes, it's an older PC from the 90s or whatever, so it would run. But nowadays, you had Steve and Gamers Nexus and Jay's Two Cents, Jay, powering, keeping cool to keep from thermal throttling where it slows down the processor and or graphics card. They're pouring that liquid nitrogen into the specialized chambers they created, or just on top of the chamber of the processor to get to go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hertz to really throttle it to get it going. And it was really hot, but it's all about tech. It's all about science and stuff, and it's really cool stuff. But that was that was G4. That was Tech TV. G4 became more of this man show where, yeah, I understand I'm a man, I'm a male, but I didn't really care about that crap. I can watch. Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movies from the '80s and be inspired to be a man. I'm watching Tech Channel because I want tech news. I don't care about man stuff. I don't care about cops. I don't care about you know the other crap on there, cheaters. I don't care about that garbage. I'm sorry. If you love cops, then fine. Love Cops. Great show. I watched a few of them myself. But I'm not gonna sit there and spend 24 hours watching it. And Tech TV was great. G4 was more of a bland, mediocre, Esquire network or Spike TV. It just became mediocre because we have to take it to a Lifetime network. We have to take it to Oprah Winfrey up there again, and then you take that Lifetime, take that Wham. We're gonna have our man show. I'm like, all I want is tech stuff. That's all I care about is tech. I don't care about watching somebody get arrested out of a trailer park because he's doing meth. I can turn on local news and watch that too. Click, oh, okay, local news today. Somebody got arrested for meth. Okay, whatever. Turn channel. I don't care. I don't care about it in the local news. I don't care about watching it on cops. Because it was basically a rerun for 10 years ago. That person's hopefully got clean or is dead. Hopefully, the person got clean is not dead, but most cases, the person's probably dead. They got arrested for meth 10 years ago in cops. Continue to re air the old cops constantly on G4 the longest time. But I think the biggest downfall of G4 was, it wasn't a cable networks. Because cable networks, weren't doing a lot of that stuff. Yeah, some cable networks, tried to put some tech stuff like on Channel 5 on the antenna, tried some tech stuff for, Channel 2, over the air stuff, tried some tech stuff. They were only like late night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, um, stuff like that. But they weren't. Oh my God, designed, with tech stuff in mind. They were just a tech channel. They were just information. Does no, to a lot of people, they're just information, info commercials. But G4 Tech TV became the first tech channel that showed games and tech and people doing things with computers and just stuff like that was cool. It wasn't some boring, TV land nonsense. It wasn't just some boring channel, but it became that because every channel becomes mediocre. Like I talked about, the wrestling and mediocre and music, Nirvana and how they became cool at one time and became mediocre in the end because they become mediocre. Once it becomes mainstream, it becomes mediocre. But G4 suffered from the problem with the issues of having um, that their fan base wanted more content other than Olivia Munn wearing a French maid dress and jumping into pudding, or um, Morgan Webb wearing tight shirts to show off her bust. Yes, that's great and beautiful and all awesome if you like watching a woman jumping a pudding or a woman wearing tight shirts, whatever. But after a while, you get tired of seeing it. You want to hear stuff about games and technology. If they didn't prolong the agony of that channel and actually got rid of it way before they should have, it could have came back with the Peter Pan knockoff, and whining about women, being ogled, in video games and stuff like that. The hideous version of Anita Sarkeesian. Um, Sorry, but that woman Peter Pan. If she's Peter Pan, then no, I'm Mister Universe. Okay, I'm sorry. I just don't believe that. That to me, it's garbage. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't care if you think that woman was making points. Ancestor going, oh yeah, making points, whatever. Ancestor is a dork. Okay, and I like his stuff. He's very down to earth kind of guy. But in that episode, he was a dork. Okay, and I think all those people on that show and revamp X Play were dorks because it was bland. Okay, I understand you want to push your liberal nonsense and your socialism crap, but I don't care about this stuff. I want tech. Like I said, I don't care about the boobs and butt. I don't care All I want to know is tech. I want to know what's going on in tech, how tech's going to change lives, how it's going to make its life better, and how the gaming experience is going to be. Granted, the boobs and butt are great to look at. Hey, fine, but there's a time and place for that. Online, in a club, and if you're married at home, with your wife, uh, or husband, or however you swing. But I'm not going to sit there and tell you that, I did not check out those individuals I mentioned, the Morgan Webbs and the Olivia Munns. Yeah, they're very attractive. No, I liked the shows they had there on, but after a while, I got tired of it because it was the same rerunning shtick every time. Even though it was a different show, it was the same rerunning stick every single time. It wasn't anything different other than just boobs and butt, jumping pudding. No, right around that one girl riding around somewhere naked on a bike. Yeah, great. Easy Rider did the same thing about 40 years ago. That young lady and myself, weren't even born. Okay, so it's kind of hard to say, hey, it's revolutionary when it's been done 40 years earlier, you know, or even 50 years later. But like I said, guys, G4 just fell apart because of places like YouTube and even Twitch and even things like that nature. I did videos on my PS4, doing videos on Twitch and YouTube on my PS4. That was more revolutionary than what G4 was. You saw me playing games. You saw actual gameplay. You saw me playing games in real time, playing video games, where you have Jay's Two Cents, Paul Holler Unboxing, all these people talk about tech all the time. That's what people want to talk about is gaming rigs, the tech, the RAM issues. Maybe even though I don't want to talk about it anymore, but a lot of people out there still talk about RAM issues because it is an important thing in people's lives. I think people out there need to understand that. Need to understand what it means to have that and to have that point of view where, you know, G4 went the way of the dodo because it got outpaced and outdone by YouTube. YouTube was in infancy, was very, very hostile, was very, very fragile at time. It could have fell apart and died if G4 came back and said, you know what, we're going to bring back all these shows, do more tech stuff, but they couldn't because their budget was being cut. YouTube didn't have a budget because their budget was kind of people like myself or Jay's Two Cents, whatever, going on there or Boogie going on there and making weird content. See, the weirdos, the weirdo people, foundation YouTube, and the tech people, including myself. Now I'm more of a opinionated tech reviewer. I'm not like a tech person like J2 Center or Gamer X or these guys who I mentioned in my comments below, in my description below. These guys are the heavy hitters. I'm more of a content discussion person. I'm more opinionated person. I talk about review things like controllers, whatever, graphics cards, whatever I buy or I use. I review it. Um, so I'm more opinionated piece. Where these guys, who I mentioned, are in the trenches, deep down, doing stuff. And I think that's what G4 once had with Tech TV. If they change their name to G4 and Tech, it'll probably be around a little longer than it was. And they brought back a screensavers, maybe a new crew of people, or put on, the angry video game nerd, or the one gentleman that says, I'm not buying it, Radeon Z1, uh, or even Scott the Waz, or even myself. Um, Jay's Two Cents can do something like that. It would be better. Take lower people on YouTube and put them on that show. And it would be maybe help G4. Because G4 at one time did use Scott the Waz stuff. Scott to the Waz was actually on G4 at one time. It was edited, obviously, heavy edited because it had to be because it wasn't YouTube. So I did watch some of those episodes of Scott the Waz when he was on there talking about stuff. about different games and that was I'm thinking that's brilliant. They're finally getting it. Then that lady talking about women not being ogled, not being ogled and whatever, and it kind of went downhill. But that kind of stuff would have been good. Even the old episodes of Angry Video Game Nerd, with maybe late night with a warning to hey, late night warning or whatever. But YouTube is vastly better service because it has you can watch anything you want. Where G4 had a program a both system. He had to program. He had to program the channel. We didn't have that in YouTube. You just make a video and send it out there and watch it just bounce off and hopefully get people to watch it and views. Um, well, that's the biggest issue, though. YouTube destroyed G4, but G4 destroyed G4. The fake knockoff Peter Pan, and then the rest of the bumbling squad of you know, you know, heretics and Grogamites on that show. Not the revamp one, but the second one, the last one that happened, that it finally went out of business and 2020 2022, and it finally died, relaunched 3 years ago, 2022. That was the bastard child that shouldn't have been born. The original one was good. The launch, the original launch was good. 2014 it died, but it was good when it started out. And I think 2002 was a good year for it because it was you had no problems from anything. But 3 or 4 years later, you had a thing called YouTube starting up. People getting on YouTube, getting online, find out they can talk about tech and stuff a lot more than what G4 was giving them, or any other cable provider was channel was giving them. And they go out there and talk about VCR stuff and how to fix things. And where you couldn't find that on a G4, you couldn't find somebody, on G4. You did it a couple times with the, you didn't have a Toasty Bros on G4. You had screensavers, but that was short lived. You didn't have an act man who was talking about opinion about games and stuff. You didn't have the hardware unboxing discussing the price of the graphics cards and how things happen with RAM, and you didn't have Gamers Nexus to come up with suit and ties and this report, Gamers Report, talking about the issues with the crypto mining currency of 2020. Then that stuff would have been great on that channel. Those gentlemen, even myself, would have been great on that channel. Even if we sat down and did it in our rooms, and uploaded it to a G4 Tech TV YouTube thing, and they aired it. They went through and they aired, they edited it what they needed to edit, and they ran it. That would have been very great for a lot of YouTubers to be on TV, but also keep G4 somewhat relevant. But it didn't happen because G4 cutting cost, and they just they didn't want to do it anymore. They wanted to make a man show and show cops and bomb squad and cheaters. Well, that's great and fine, but you can watch that crap on any channel. So G4 Tech TV died because of a change of times. Just like Circuit City and Toys R Us make comeback, by the way. But Toys R Us, Circuit City, Radio Shack, a lot of places, G4 Tech TV, it has a spot on the shelf of uselessness because it became what it was not trying to be, useless. It was great in the mid 2000s, and when it went to 2010, people saw how it was writing on the wall. But YouTube was still in infancy. You didn't have a lot of people doing tech, and they were. Some people were, some people weren't. But now with tech being exploding right now, perfect time for a TV channel like that. But we have YouTube for that now. I would love to have a TV channel showing my videos on, or since Scott the Woz had one, and G4 used to show Scott the Woz videos. Scott to the Waz. Not so much angry video game nerd because let's be honest, he's very foul. But that's his appeal. I would love to see, Jay's Two Cents TV media on there, or Gamers Nexus, wearing, like I said, wearing a suit and tie, talking about, the upcoming reports about things he's doing on, on G4. It would have been great. But YouTube is becoming the TV tube now of everybody. You can go on here now and make a video and get, 100 views, and bam, you're an instant somewhat star because now people, 100 views, 100 people have watched your video all the way through or not, whatever. But they watched your video, watch your content. And I think that's the biggest issue. I think what G4 was is that it died it should have been killed off a long time ago. When YouTube came up, it should have been slowly killed off. Not revamping, trying new stars, trying new people, trying to have Morgan Webb wear tighter shirts or whatever nonsense it is. But just have a little bit of mud, dumping in pudding. Just slowly roll back. Okay, we're gonna get rid of this channel. We're gonna slow it down. We're gonna show reruns of all the shows on this channel and just keep it as just a generic channel where it's just reruns of your favorite shows, tech shows, screensavers, whatever, and just do that. Hell, now they had Nick Games and Gas, Nickelodeon Game and Gas, Nickelodeon Games and Gas, for kids on until like 2009, 2010, and all that show was reruns of shows. That was really good, by the way. I like watching Double Dare because those great shows. But Nickelodeon Studio has been closed down for a long time. So you see how they went pretty much out of business. Nickelodeon wise, it's just one of those things. So a lot of stations, a lot of TV channels, a lot of places now, media things are learning that YouTube is the place to go. You can find stuff like Legend Hen Temple and stuff like that on YouTube. You can find X Play. I've been watching X Play forever on YouTube because it's been on here. I've been watching it. I let it play for 7 hours, 7 hours straight. I watch. I go to sleep watching it, listening to it. Why? Because I like watching the old stuff. Because to me, that brought me back to a time when I was out of high school, 2002. I was working. I was getting ready to go to school, college, and I was going to buy a house in '05. So foreclosed home in '05. So I had to save up a lot of money. So going out with friends, I couldn't do. Of course, I borrowed money from family too, of course, too, and helped that too as well. And bought a foreclosed home and got it, and here I am with it. But it's like a long time, man, a long time ago for all that stuff. A lot of things happened in our lives. G4 no longer with us, and it's a good riddance to it because it was no longer viable. But it made a lot of fun. A lot of us who are 44 or 45 or in our 40s, you probably recognize G4, recognize the slogan, recognize the videos, watching, Halo 3 on it, the upcoming Xbox 360 release, and all this stuff, E3 press conferences. That stuff was cool to watch back then. Nowadays, all these YouTubers I mentioned, hell, I even broadcasted E3 on my channel. And it was mostly just the camera right up here, just showing the TV behind me, and I was discussing what was going on. But that was me showing you broadcasting E3. One of the last ones that really was actually popular. Um, but guys, that's it to my video, guys. It's just less talk. This is a less talk video. A lot of people are not on right now. I know it's Tuesday and all, but it's just my way of just going back down memory lane of my channel and talking about things in the past I talked about that once were relevant and not relevant anymore. Today, next video will be about just general, I guess, general news, in the world right now. RAM prices still having issues, graphics cards still not going down. But PC people are still buying PC stuff and still trying to get that PC game going. So I'm trying to help you guys out best I can. Um, I'll do a video discussing PC prices. I'll do a video discussing what's cheaper, pre-built or just building your own. Future note, both of them are expensive. But I'll go through a list and we'll discuss stuff. I'll do that probably next week. I'll make another video tomorrow. I usually make random videos on Wednesday. I usually call it Random Wednesdays, or make a video. But if you drop a dime on my messenger about something, and I'll make a video about that. I'll talk about that. I have no problem with it, guys, doing that. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. Go on down below, elbow drop the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys later. Peace out. God bless you guys. And I'm almost at 1,000 videos. So peace out. Be safe. God bless.